The country club ballroom was packed with 60 guests celebrating my father's retirement from Brooks Manufacturing, the industrial supply company he'd spent 35 years building into a regional powerhouse. Banners proclaimed, "Congratulations, Richard." And tables overflowed with catered food that cost more per plate than I used to spend on groceries for a week. I stood against the back wall in black pants and a plain sweater from 3 years ago, holding a glass of water. Nobody had offered me champagne. Nobody had offered me anything. My stepmom Diane held court at the center table in a crimson designer dress, her blonde hair styled perfectly, her laugh echoing across the room. She'd married Dad 8 years ago, 3 years after Mom died. I was 21 then, and Diane made it immediately clear that I was an inconvenient remnant of Dad's previous life. "There you are, hiding in the shadows as usual," my stepsister Brittany said, appearing beside me with a smirk. She was 24, Diane's daughter from her first marriage, and she'd perfected the art of looking down at people despite being 5'3". "You know, you really should have dressed up. This is an important event." "I'm dressed fine. For a bookkeeper, maybe." She looked me up and down. "Dad said you're still doing that little accounting thing from home?" "Something like that." "Well, at least you found something you can do alone. Social events clearly aren't your strength." She drifted away, leaving her perfume hanging in the air like an insult. I'd gotten used to this treatment. In the 8 years since Diane entered our lives, I'd been systematically pushed to the margins of the family. Dad had been so grateful to find love again after Mom's death that he'd let Diane reshape everything, including his relationship with me. The few times I'd tried to connect with him, Diane was there with a comment about how Richard needs to focus on his new family now, or some daughters just can't be happy for their fathers. So I'd stopped trying. I showed up to mandatory events like this, stayed quiet and left early. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Diane's voice rang out. She stood at the microphone, beaming. "I want to thank you all for celebrating Richard's incredible career. 35 years of dedication to Brooks Manufacturing." Applause filled the room. Dad stood beside her, looking proud in his expensive suit, paid for by the company, of course. "Richard built this company from almost nothing," Diane continued. "And now he's finally going to enjoy the retirement he deserves. Starting with our 6-month European cruise next month." More applause. Someone whistled. "But before we get to speeches," Diane said, her eyes scanning the room and landing on me, "we need to clean up a bit. This mess is getting out of hand." She gestured at the tables where guests had been eating, plates and glasses scattered everywhere. Her eyes locked on mine. "Sarah, dear, could you handle that?" The room went quiet for a moment. A few people looked uncomfortable. I set down my water glass. "You want me to clean up?" "Well, yes." Diane's smile was sharp. "You're not really participating in the celebration anyway. Might as well make yourself useful." "Mom," Brittany Stage whispered loudly, "maybe we should just call the catering staff." "Nonsense," Diane interrupted. "Clean up these dishes," she said louder, her voice carrying across the room. "It's the only thing you're good for." A few people laughed nervously. My dad said nothing, just looked down at his drink. I walked slowly toward the nearest table and started stacking plates. My hands were steady even though my heart was racing. Around me, conversations resumed. A few people watched with pity. Most ignored me like I was actual catering staff. "That's just sad," I heard someone whisper. "Richard's daughter from his first marriage," another person explained. "Never amounted to much. The new wife has to be patient with her." I collected plates from 3 tables, my face burning but my expression neutral. I'd learned over the years not to react. Not to give Diane the satisfaction. I was carrying a stack of dishes toward the service area when the ballroom doors opened. A tall man in a tailored navy suit walked in, his silver hair perfectly combed, his presence commanding immediate attention. Thomas Anderson, VP of Operations at Brooks Manufacturing. One of the most powerful executives in the company. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me. His face lit up with surprise. "Miss Brooks? I didn't know you'd be here." The room went silent. Thomas strode across the ballroom and extended his hand. I set down the dishes and shook it. "Mr. Anderson," I said quietly. "Good to see you." "The pleasure is mine." He turned to address the confused crowd. "I apologize for being late. I was on a call with our investors, finalizing some details about the company transition. Dad stepped forward. Thomas, thank you for coming. I wanted to introduce you to... Actually, Richard, Thomas interrupted, I'm already acquainted with Sarah. He smiled at me. Though I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you serving dishes at your own father's retirement party. My own, what are you talking about? Diane's voice was sharp. Thomas's expression shifted to confusion as he looked around the room. I'm sorry, did everyone not know? He looked back at me. Should I not have? It's fine, I said. Go ahead. Thomas cleared his throat. Everyone, meet the silent partner who owns 60% of the company your father just retired from. For 3 full seconds nobody moved. Then Dad's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. The sound broke the spell. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. That's impossible, Diane said, her voice shrill. Sarah is a bookkeeper. She lives in a tiny apartment. She doesn't have that kind of money. Ms. Brooks is the founder and CEO of Summit Capital Group, Thomas explained calmly. She's been acquiring shares in Brooks Manufacturing for the past 6 years. As of last month, she controls 60% of the company through various investment vehicles. Dad found his voice. Sarah, is this true? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. Yes. But, how? Why didn't you tell me? You never asked about my life, Dad. Not once in 8 years. You assumed I was barely getting by because that's what Diane told you, and you believed her without question. Diane's face had gone from red to white. This is ridiculous. Richard, she's lying. She's making this up too. I can show you the paperwork, Thomas offered, pulling out his phone. The majority ownership transfer was finalized 3 weeks ago. I've been working directly with Ms. Brooks on the transition plan for your retirement. He handed his phone to Dad, who stared at the screen like it contained alien hieroglyphics. $140 million, Dad whispered, reading the valuation. You bought $140 million worth of company stock? Over 6 years, I corrected. I started with a small percentage and built up gradually. You were selling shares to fund your lifestyle. I glanced at Diane's diamond bracelet, her designer dress. I was happy to buy them. Brittany had gone completely silent, her mouth hanging open. The bookkeeping business, Dad said slowly. That was a cover story, I finished. I do run an accounting firm, but it's not some small operation. I have 47 employees and we handle financial management for mid-sized companies across 3 states. That's how I learned Brooks Manufacturing was undervalued. That's how I knew shares were available. Thomas nodded. Ms. Brooks approached me 2 years ago with a proposal to help modernize the company. We've been working together on restructuring plans, waiting for your retirement to implement them. Restructuring. Diane's voice cracked. What restructuring? The next week I restructured everything, I said, looking directly at her. Starting with company assets. Every vehicle, every property, every expense account. I audited everything. I pulled out my own phone and opened a document. That Mercedes you drive, Diane? The one you told Dad the company leased for you? It's not a lease. It's owned outright by Brooks Manufacturing, purchased 3 years ago for $95,000. Diane's face went pale. And my stepmom's luxury car? It was registered under my company, I continued. Which means it's my car. You've been driving my car for 3 years. That's... Richard, tell her she can't. The beach house in Malibu, that's Dad's retirement property? I continued. Also owned by the company. My company now. The country club membership you use 3 times a week? Company account. The credit card you use for shopping? Company expense card. I scrolled through my phone. In the past 3 years, you've spent $340,000 in company money on personal expenses. Cars, clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, that European cruise you just mentioned. The room was completely silent now. That's not illegal, Diane stammered. Richard approved all of it. Richard approved it when he was CEO and majority owner. Thomas interjected. But he wasn't majority owner. Sarah was. Every expenditure over $10,000 required majority shareholder approval, which means Sarah technically approved all of it. Which I didn't, I said flatly. Which means for the past 2 years, you've been spending company money without proper authorization. That's embezzlement. Dad finally found his voice. Sarah, you can't be serious. You're going to press charges against your own stepmother? No, I said. I'm not going to press charges. But I am going to take back everything that belongs to the company. I looked at Diane. The Mercedes will be returned by Monday. The beach house is company property. You're not going on a European cruise, you're moving out. The credit cards are cancelled as of tonight. And your membership at this country club. I glanced around the room. Also cancelled. Diane looked like she might faint. You can't do this. Richard, tell her she can't do this. Dad looked between us, his face ashen. Sarah, please. Can we talk about this privately? We could have talked privately 8 years ago, Dad. We could have talked any of the hundreds of times you chose Diane's version of reality over checking in with your own daughter. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. It was easier to believe I was a failure than to actually be curious about my life. I turned to address the room. For everyone else who works at Brooks Manufacturing, nothing changes. Your jobs are secure. Thomas and I have been planning this transition for months. The company is going to be stronger than ever. My dad's best friend, George, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Richard, did you really not know Sarah owned the company? Dad shook his head, looking lost. I kept it quiet for a reason, I said. I wanted to see how I'd be treated when everyone thought I was worthless. Turns out pretty terribly. I picked up my purse, the same discount brand bag that Brittany had mocked when I arrived. The retirement package we discussed, Dad, is still on the table. You get your pension, your 401k, and a severance of $500,000. That's more than generous for someone who spent the last few years treating the company like a personal piggy bank. And me. Diane's voice was barely a whisper. You get nothing from the company. But you're married to Dad, so whatever he has is half yours. I suggest you live modestly. Brittany finally found her voice. This is insane. Mom, we need to call a lawyer. Call whoever you want, I said. Thomas, do you have the company restructuring documents? Right here. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. I can review them now, or we can schedule a proper meeting. Tao is fine. I took the folder and turned to Dad. Your retirement party just became a company meeting. Anyone not on the Brooks Manufacturing payroll should probably leave. About 20 people got up and hurried out, including several of Diane's friends. The remaining guests, actual company employees, looked shocked but stayed seated. I opened the folder. Effective Monday, Brooks Manufacturing is implementing new financial controls. All expenses over $1,000 require approval from both the CEO and VP of Operations. Company vehicles are for business use only. The beach house is being sold, with proceeds going back into capital improvements. Sarah, Dad said, his voice pleading. Can we please talk about this? Just you and me. I looked at him. At this man who'd raised me for 21 years and then let someone else erase me from his life for 8 more. What do you want to talk about, Dad? I don't understand why you did this. Why you bought the company without telling me. I bought it because it was a good investment, I said simply. I didn't tell you because you made it clear I wasn't worth your time anymore. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me, Dad? When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Not as a formality, but actually caring about the answer. He couldn't respond. I visit Mom's grave every Sunday, I said quietly. Have for 8 years. You've never been there when I was. Diane told me once that you'd moved on, and I should too. Diane looked away. I built a successful business from nothing because Mom taught me about hard work before she died. She taught me to be independent, to not rely on anyone else for my value. So when you remarried and forgot I existed, I didn't fall apart. I succeeded. I closed the folder. The company is in good hands. Thomas and I have plans to expand into 3 new markets, modernize the equipment and increase efficiency. In 5 years, it'll be worth triple what it is now. And what about me? Dad asked. What about our relationship? That depends on you, I said. You can accept that I'm not the failure Diane told you I was, or you can keep believing her version of reality. Either way, I'm done trying to prove myself to you. I walked toward the exit, past the tables where I'd been collecting dishes 20 minutes earlier. Dad's voice stopped me. Sir, wait. Please. I turned. He looked older suddenly, the realization of what he'd lost settling on his face like a weight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. About all of it. Apologies are just words, Dad. Then what do you want from me? I thought about it for a moment. I want you to remember that the daughter you ignored for 8 years just saved your retirement. The company was hemorrhaging money because of Diane's spending. In 2 more years, you'd have had nothing to retire on. His face crumbled. I bought the company to save it, I continued. And yeah, maybe part of me wanted you to see that I wasn't a failure. But mostly I did it because it was the right business decision. I left him there, surrounded by shocked employees and a stepmom who'd just realized she'd lost everything. As I walked to my car, a practical sedan I'd owned for 6 years, my phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. That went well, all things considered. Board meeting Monday at 9. I smiled and replied, see you then. The drive home took 30 minutes. I lived in a nice apartment. Nothing extravagant but comfortable and mine. When I walked in, I made myself tea and sat on my couch, finally letting the emotions of the night catch up to me. 3 days later, Dad called. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked for the first time in years. He'd moved into a hotel. Diane had served him with divorce papers the morning after the party, once she realized there was no money left to take. I should have seen it, he said. I should have seen what she was doing to us. Yeah, I agreed. You should have. Can we try again? Father and daughter. Maybe, I said. But it starts with you actually being interested in my life. The real one, not the one you assumed I was living. He came to my office the following week. Met my employees. Saw the business I'd built. For the first time in 8 years I saw pride in his eyes. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Because here's what I learned that night at the retirement party. You don't need people to believe in you to succeed. You just need to believe in yourself. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's succeeding so completely that their opinion stops mattering entirely.